Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bridgerton reading series. I believe this is part 9, trying better to actually keep in check on what part it is. But, with that being said, let's go ahead and just get straight into it. You don't know? Anthony said, his voice low and nearly shaking with rage. You don't know what he has done. No more than what you have done, I'm sure, Violet said slyly. Precisely, Anthony roared. Good God, I know exactly what is going on in his brain right now, and it has nothing to do with poetry and roses. Simon pictured laying Daphne down on a bed of rose petals. Well, maybe roses, he murmured. I'm going to kill him, Anthony announced. These are tulips anyway, Violet said primly. From Holland. And Anthony, you really must summon control of your emotions. This is most unseemly. He is not fit to lick Daphne's boots. Simon's head filled with more erotic images, this time of himself licking her toes. He decided not to comment. Besides, he had already decided that he wasn't going to allow his thoughts to wander in such directions. Daphne was Anthony's sister, for God's sake. He couldn't seduce her. I refuse to listen to another disparaging word about his grace, Violet said emphatically, and that is the end of the subject. But I don't like your tone, Anthony Bridgerton. Simon thought he heard Daphne choke on a chuckle, and he wondered what that was all about. If it would please your motherhood, Anthony said in excruciatingly even tones, I would like a private word with his grace. This time, I'm really going to get that vase, Daphne announced, and dashed from the room. Violet crossed her arms and said to Anthony, I will not have you mistreat a guest in my house. I shan't lay so much as a hand on him, Anthony replied. I give you my word. Having never had a mother, Simon was finding this exchange fascinating. Bridgerton House was, after all, technically Anthony's house, not his mother's, and Simon was impressed that Anthony had refrained from pointing this out. It's quite all right, Lady Bridgerton, he interjected. I'm sure Anthony and I have much to discuss. Anthony's eyes narrowed. Much. Very well, Violet said. You're going to do what you want, no matter what I say anyway. But I'm not leaving. She plopped down onto the sofa. This is my drawing room, and I'm comfortable here. If the two of you want to engage in that asinine interchange that passes for a conversation among the males of our species, you may do so elsewhere. Simon blinked in surprise. Clearly, there was more to Daphne's mother than met the eye. Anthony jerked his head toward the door, and Simon followed him into the hall. My study is this way, Anthony said. You have a study here? I am the head of the family. Of course, Simon allowed. But you do reside elsewhere. Anthony paused and turned an assessing stare on Simon. It cannot have escaped your notice that my position as head of the Bridgerton family carries with it serious responsibilities. Simon looked him evenly in the eye. Meaning Daphne? Precisely. If I recall, Simon said, earlier this week you told me you wanted to introduce us. That was before I thought you'd be interested in her. Simon held his tongue as he preceded Anthony into his study, remaining silent until Anthony shut the door. Why, he asked softly, would you assume I would not be interested in your sister? Besides the fact that you have sworn to me that you will never marry, Anthony drawled. He had a good point. Simon hated that he had such a good point. Besides that, he snapped. Anthony blinked a couple times, then said, no one is interested in Daphne. At least, no one we'd have her marry. Simon crossed his arms and leaned back against the wall. You don't hold her in a terribly high regard, do you? Before he could even finish the query, Anthony had him by the throat. Don't you dare insult my sister. But Simon had learned quite a bit about self-defense on his travels, and it took him only 2 seconds to reverse their positions. I wasn't insulting your sister, he said in a malevolent voice. I was insulting you. Strange gurgling sounds were coming from Anthony's throat, so Simon let him go. As it happens, he said, brushing his hands against each other. Daphne explained to me why she has not attracted any suitable suitors. Oh? Anthony asked derisively. Personally, I think it has everything to do with you and your brother's appealic ways. But she tells me it is because all London views her as a friend, and no one sees her as a romantic heroine. Anthony was silent for a long moment before saying, I see. Then, after another pause, he added thoughtfully, she's probably right. Simon said nothing, just watched his friend as he sorted all of this out. Finally, Anthony said, I still don't like your sniffing about her. Good God, you make me sound positively canine. Anthony crossed his arms. Don't forget, we ran in the same pack after we left Oxford. I know exactly what you've done. Oh, for the love of Christ, Bridgerton, we were 20. All men are idiots at that age. Besides, you know damn well that... Simon felt his tongue grow awkward and faked a coughing fit to cover his stammer. Damn, this happens so infrequently these days, but when it did, it was always when he was upset or angry. If he lost control over his emotions, he lost control over his speech. It was as simple as that. And unfortunately, episodes such as this only served to make him upset and angry with himself, which in turn exasperated the stammer. It was the worst sort of vicious circle. Anthony looked at him quizzically. Are you all right? Simon nodded. Just a bit of dust in my throat, he lied. Shall I ring for tea? Simon nodded again. He didn't particularly want tea, but it seemed the sort of thing one would ask for if one truly did have dust in one's throat. Anthony tugged at the bell pull, then turned back to Simon and asked, You were saying? Simon swallowed, hoping the gesture would help him to regain control over his ire. I merely meant to point out that you know better than anyone that at least half of my reputation is undeserved. Yes, but I was there for the half that was deserved. And while I don't mind your occasionally socializing with Daphne, I don't want you courting her. Simon stared at his friend, or at least the man he thought was his friend, in disbelief. Do you really think I'd seduce your sister? I don't know what to think. I know you plan to never marry. I know that Daphne does. Anthony shrugged. Frankly, that's enough for me to keep you two on opposite sides of the dance floor. Simon let out a long breath. While Anthony's attitude was irritating as hell, he supposed it was understandable, and in fact even laudable. After all, the man was only acting in the best interests of his sister. Simon had difficulty imagining being responsible for anyone save himself, but he supposed that if he had a sister, he'd be damn picky about who courted her as well. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Enter, Anthony called out. Instead of the maid with tea, Daphne slipped into the room. Mother told me that the two of you are in beastly moods, and I should leave you alone. But I thought I ought to make certain neither of you had killed the other one. No, Anthony said with a grim smile. Just a light strangle. To Daphne's credit, she didn't bat an eyelash. Who strangled whom? I strangled him, her brother replied. Then he returned the favor. I see, she said slowly. I'm sorry to have missed the entertainment. Simon couldn't suppress a smile at her remark. Daph, he began. Anthony rolled around. You call her Daph? His head snapped back to Daphne. Did you give him permission to use your given name? Of course. But I think, Simon interrupted, that we are going to have to come out clean. Daphne nodded somberly. I think you're right. If you recall, I told you so. How genteel of you to mention it, Simon murmured. She smiled gamely. I could not resist. With 4 brothers, after all, one must always seize the moment when one may say, I told you so. Simon looked from sibling to sibling. I don't know which one of you I pity more. What the devil is going on? Anthony demanded, and then added as an aside, And that is our time. Thank you all so much for listening. We are about to finish chapter 6, and we're going to get into chapter 7 next time. But yeah, with that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.